just to use the camera microphone. Switch to that. Good evening. I'm back. This is a limited engagement for 1 week. I will be reading from my book, and I hope you enjoy. But first, a little introduction. Well, tonight we're going to continue chapter 1. I'm going to go back a little bit just to pick up where the section ended. So, as we left last night, because obviously my computer was going to die for whatever reason, so I had to cut it short. But tonight we're going to try to get at least the rest of this chapter done. This is chapter 1 of my book, Terra Mutare. Matt looked over his shoulder towards the idyllic farmhouse and let out a small sigh. We will find a new place, one closer to Tempe, but we can't just get comfortable for too long. The voice of his wife rang in his head. He replied, slightly deflated, safety first. The moon was a sliver of silver in the sky, bruised with clouds as the family pressed together against a wind. Matt's voice cut through the stinging chill of late winter weather or early spring, depending on who you asked. Bubba, you're up front. Be ready with a light just in case we need it. The boy with a wild mop of hair swallowed and nodded, clutching a sputtering kerosene lantern that cast jittery shadows across his oversized coat. He turned the switch, dimming the light, preparing to let his eyes adjust to the darkness. D, Matt said, placing his hand on his wife's shoulder. Scan for any stray spots that aren't ours. You slot in right behind Bubba, ahead of Logan, our psychic buffer. He turned his gaze to his youngest. Logan, you shadow D and take this. He put a large duffel on 2 straps and set it on his back. Logan let the weight of the bag soothe him and used one of his few words he had. Ready! Logan striding forward, muscles taut under the weight. I'll bring up the rear, Matt announced, slinging a rifle across one broad shoulder while looping the modified trailer harness over the other. He handed Brendan the gleaming .45 in its leather holster. Safety off before you fire, understood? Brendan rolled his eyes, voice laced with sarcasm. Why not try it with the safety on? What's the worst that could happen? Matt's jaw tightened so hard, Matt felt the future crackle in the air. I'd skin you alive in your sleep if we weren't this close to surviving. He seethed, only to contain it behind a thin veil of controlled fury, his exhaustion and fatigue overriding his rational brain. God, you're ancient, Brendan retorted, that practiced mockery dancing in his tone. Did your sense of humor die with your hairline, or was it just haunting you? How many kids did you want to save, D? Matt shot at his wife, raising an eyebrow, softening into the banter. 4 would be acceptable, Diane replied crisply. Fantastic. I'll grab the shovel, Matt said in dramatic fashion. Brendan slouched, arms crossed. I'm quaking, old man. Quaking, he drawled. Logan and Diane chuckled softly. This momentary amount of levity, despite their uncertain night, was both necessary and welcomed. Matt's frustration softened as he reached for the trailer straps and hoisted it up ready for the night's journey. They plunged into the night, the tires of the trailer whining against the hard-packed earth. After what felt like hours, a creeping fog rose in the ghostly threads, wrapping around the trees. Moisture clung to Matt's broken duct tape glasses till the world blurred to a dull smear. He signaled Brendan, who slowed up the pace as Matt peeled off his lenses and rubbed them clean against his shirt. Laughter had once lightened their steps, but now the dark pressed in, cold and watchful. Then came the low, guttural growls, 6 of them, echoing through the undergrowth. Instantly, Matt braced the cart's wheel on the ground. How many? He thought sharply. 6, not human, Diane answered inside his head. 3 flanking right, 1 left, 1 ahead, 1 crawling up behind. Logan, be ready, Matt ordered, voice taut, and Brendan. Light them up from the front. Let's see if the fire scares these bastards off. D, on your count. A huge shape lunged from the right. It was stopped midair and then slammed against a tree 20 feet away with a crack that split the silence. Brendan's first 3 searing beams carved through the gloom. One pinioned the gray wolf to the bark and the plume of flame, Logan holding it tightly to the tree. The creature thrashed, ribs compressing under an invisible force. Its howl ripped at their nerves. 2 more blasts scorched the earth in front and behind, igniting the dead leaves in quick little bonfires. The remaining wolves slunk forward, dripping with menace, teeth glinting silver. Matt's heart hammered as he scanned around them. There was one not accounted for. Brendan hadn't missed him. A plasma bolt hissed past Matt's cheek, detonated his feet, and the wolf that lunged now pivoted, retreating to regroup to the front. On the tree, the captive's frenzied howls ratcheted to a scream. Logan used his power and crushed the wolf's throat, concaving its neck in a spray of dark ichor. Logan wrenched the twisting corpse free and flung it toward the pack. The body tumbled across their backs. The pack yelped in terror, retreating into the fog, dragging their fallen brother. One last streak of light seared across the nearest wolf's haunch, its anguished cry echoing as they vanished. Clear left, Diane's calm voice resonated in Matt's mind. Clear front, Brendan called out. Bad doggy, a tiny electronic voice said in the dark. Clear rear, Matt said reassuringly. An image of the burned rump flickered in Matt's skull. He exhaled in relief. Nice work, Logan. Rear and right are dark for now. Brendan, pull the flames back. Please, let's not leave a signal running. His chest heaved. They'd survive. But every use of their gift was a beacon to hungry trackers. Matt hoisted the cart straps again, scanning the perimeter. They moved on in dead silence until the horizon blushed with the dawn. In the pre-dawn hour, they spotted a lonely farmhouse half a mile off the road. Matt judged the distance they had traveled, about 30 miles from their last safe house. At this pace, he grimly calculated Tempe was still 6 months away, and every step would bleed them dry. He was beginning to lose hope, and exhaustion was creeping in through every pore. But once they secured this house, they could rest for a few hours at least. Matt thought to his wife, anything? Not that I'm feeling, it's just empty space, she replied quietly. Can you let me help Logan do a ground search for booby traps? He asked his wife. I can try. Matt approached Logan, put his forehead to his son's. He spoke softly. Okay, Logan, can we do a safety check like the other places? It seemed every house in this part of the state had been booby-trapped, like the farmers were trying to make sure no one got to them, as if it made them safe from the end of the world. So far, sadly, the only thing they had found was dead bodies and some poorly constructed traps. An injury at this point could be devastating to the rest of the trip, as Matt was not going to risk more than he had to. Logan nodded and turned toward the house, just like he had at the last several houses, and began to slowly push his power out from himself, running it along the ground, searching for anything that didn't belong there. A tripwire, a claymore, or anything tied to something that it shouldn't be. Slowly, his power lifted the objects hidden across the field, leading to the door of the house. First a shovel lifted off the ground, then several split logs, a small axe. They were all then dropped back to the ground with a soft clang. Clothesline spindle began to spin next, and a small child-sized body was lifted off the ground and quickly dropped. Further in, two more larger bodies were lifted off the ground, and a shovel that had been tangled in the loose clothing of a body fell with a loud clang. Matt looked at Diane for reassurance. She had made an okay hand gesture, letting him know that the sound hadn't rattled any mind near them. Then gently Logan set the bodies back down, the soft thump of the bodies coming to rest where they were. Logan looked at Matt for approval. To the left of the homestand was a small utility shed. Okay, can you try the shed? Matt said encouragingly to Logan as he pointed to where he wanted his son to focus his powers. Just then, the shed began to lift away from its small concrete foundation. A loud thump and clanging metal could be heard from inside the shed as things fell off the wall hooks. The door swung open, more noise, more worry. Matt mentally checked Diane again, anxious that the noise had brought something out of the dark. It's still clear, my love, he hears in his head. Bubba, light. Keep it outside this time, thanks, Matt instructed. Matt began walking past the clothesline, then the small firewood storage, looking back over his shoulder to see the small female body in a sundress, and two adult bodies, both with coveralls and long sleeve shirts. There was a shallow hole that appeared to be a small grave with a tiny cross sticking out of the dirt pile. This wasn't the time to think about that. The bodies had decomposed months ago, so not much was left. Matt was surprised they were still intact, but he guesses even the animals didn't want to eat the virus-ravaged bodies. Matt returned his vision to the shed and raised his arm above his head. A small streak of light went past. And then I lost my spot because I had to look at the thing. And where was it? There we go. Matt returned his vision to the shed, raised his arm above his head, and a small streak of light went past his head and landed about 2 feet from the front of the shed, lighting the interior. Matt scanned the interior and saw no signs of traps, but did make note of the storm shelter hidden below. Matt thought down slowly. The shed then dropped back down into place with a clang, as the tools that didn't fall off early certainly fell off now. Okay, D, take Logan to the porch and wait for the far end of the steps. Bubba, with me, Matt stated calmly. Diane and Logan walked toward the porch, stopping just off the steps and watched as Matt opened the shed door. The rakes and hoes and shears and other assorted small garden tools lay strewn about the floor, covering the entry to the storm shelter. Matt nodded as he moved the assorted tools off the shelter door and touched the handle to open while holding fingers in a countdown. 3, 2, 1. Fingers dropped as Matt shoved open the door to see a small streak of light go past his face into the dark shelter, lighting a large, empty room half filled with water. Matt closed the door, turned to his oldest boy, ushering him to exit the shed. They exited the shed and faced the porch, noting the boarded windows on the first floor, only one way in. Matt closed the distance quickly and motioned for Diane to head to the far end of the porch away from the door. Diane and Logan had found a small porch swing on the far side of the porch. They sat down and were gently swinging as the sun rose in the east. The soft creak of the metal hooks grinding against each other as large wooden swing rocked back and forth. Diane was handing Logan his movie tablet to watch movies as a reward for his good work. He greedily opened the tablet and began to scroll through his movies. The tablet volume was off, but its light reflected the boy's joy. Matt looked at Diane, the eerie blue light illuminating her face, and the light coming in from the east highlighted her back as they swung back in the swing. Matt pulled his gun off his shoulder and began to approach the front door of the home. Tapped Brendan on the chest as he walked past, indicating for him to assist. Matt approached the front door. It was closed, but unlocked. He turned the handle slowly and gently pushed the door open, looking for traps or wires that had become so common. As he opened enough to accommodate Matt, he pushed his rifle out in front and began to look inside the house, scanning from left to right. A small dining room with a kitchen offset towards the back of the room. To Matt's left was the living or grand room, and on the right, a staircase that went up to the second floor. Behind Matt, Brendan tapped him as a sign to go inside. They began the long process of clearing each room in order left to right. Matt made note that the cabinets in the kitchen were undisturbed, which maybe meant that there were some non-perishables to scavenge. As they approached the stairs, Matt heard the creak of the door and turned to see his youngest boy standing silently in the doorway, the tablet illuminating his body and the foyer. Matt motioned for the boy to stay. Matt began to walk up the stairs slowly, looking for any signs of ambush or traps that weren't obvious. He turned toward Logan again, only this time he saw Diane trying to keep Logan from running towards his father. After the escape from the Helljumper's cat and the loss of his sister, Logan had been especially antsy where his father was concerned. Matt spoke to his son to reassure him, "Daddy is okay. I just need to check up the stairs." The image of Matt bleeding out formed in Matt's head. "I'm okay. I have Bubba with me," he stated as he began to ascend the stairs. At the top, he saw two bedrooms and a bathroom on one side and a third bedroom on the other. Brendan and Matt cleared the remaining rooms upstairs and returned to the living room downstairs. He saw Diane and Logan on the couch. She had been giving him deep pressure by squishing his legs into his body to help him regulate himself and keep him occupied during the sweep. Logan loved feeling the weight on his upper body, of each push letting her body weight collapse into him. Matt approached her, tapped on her shoulder, and let her go sit down, while he took over, giving the deep pressure to Logan. The early light had begun to filter into the home, highlighting his wife and son's faces. "You guys look like shit," he stated to his wife and Brendan as they sat in chairs opposite the couch. Each of them flipped their middle fingers to Matt. "Yes, I am number one. Thank you for your thoughtfulness," Matt replied to the gesture. They collectively sighed and then set about moving their belongings off the road into the house. "Bet they have well water. Anyone up for a bath?" asked Matt, knowing Logan would be happy to take one. One of the best things about his older son Flowers was that he could heat the water for baths. A warm bath in this world was a luxury. Matt stood up, and Logan grabbed the tablet that was on the couch and began to turn the volume up. A familiar sounding movie broke the silence. Matt approached his wife, leaning down to give her a kiss. "If they have well water, we could all use a bath and a change of clothes," Diane replied. "Nah, I'm good. I love the smell of burnt wolf hair in the morning," Matt smiled. Not happening. You're bathing, or I will not touch you until you do," Diane replies as she holds her nose and places her hand on his chest to shove him back playfully. "Oh, now it's on," he replies with a smile. "This will work for a few days at least, and then it's on to the next one. Tempe isn't going to find itself," he thinks towards his wife. "One can hope, and yeah, it probably won't," she replied aloud. "Time to raid the cabinets, get clean, and then get set up and get some rest. We need it." Matt watched his family settle into the temporary sanctuary, this fleeting pocket of safety. The weight of their losses, his daughter, her husband, pressed against his chest, grief stacked like unpaid debts. There had been no time to mourn, not when they pivoted from searching for Diane's children to becoming prey themselves. Every faction wanted what flowed in his veins, and with each narrow escape, his confidence eroded. Survival should demand certainty, yet doubt shadowed his every choice. Had stopping at the house been wisdom or folly? Would the road have been safer? Would it have claimed them through the sheer exhaustion? The virus hadn't just written DNA. It had erased civilization's foundations. Yet in these rare quiet moments, watching Logan with his tablet, Matt couldn't help but wonder if the world they had lost had deserved their nostalgia after all. Even without nuclear codes, humanity seemed determined to extinguish itself. And some nights, watching his children sleep, he couldn't decide whether to fight that extinction or welcome it. He wasn't going to find the answer right now. In this moment, his family was safe. And that would have to be enough, for at least today. Chapter 2. Archie Lee and the Helljumpers. The sound batter... I can talk tonight. I'm doing fantastic. That's what happens. I feel like the teacher at the front of the room. The sound barrier shattered with a thunderous crack as Major Archie Lee cut through the clouds, his 6'1" frame slicing the air like a missile. The wind whipped across his shaved head, square jaw, revealing a network of scars that mapped his face like tributaries. His camouflage uniform rippled against broad shoulders and a chest hardened by years of lifting heavy boxes, now enhanced by the Mutare virus. As he decelerated, his ice blue eyes, unnaturally bright since the mutation, methodically swept the landscape below. Flash of light pulling his attention earthward. Banking lower, he spotted a cluster of farmhouses along the road, an electrical line arcing between poles catching the sun. Power? Out here? He murmured, then noticed a solar array scattered through the adjacent field. Smart setup. Shame that intelligence didn't save anyone. Archie Lee's body tingled with the familiar rush as he pushed himself higher, the air thinning until his lungs burned and his ears popped. Up here, where commercial jets once cruised, he spread his arms wide, grateful for the Mutari virus and the new purpose in life. The ground below shrank to a patchwork quilt of destruction and survival. Humanity's remnants no larger than insects from this godlike vantage. His lips cracked in the cold as he smiled, tasting blood and freedom in equal measure. So many artifacts of the old world are still holding on. He flexed his fingers, feeling the weight of absence where his squad should be. The solar panels glinted below, useless tech that couldn't stop the virus, couldn't stop the mutations, couldn't feed his men. His stomach growled as he banked away from the empty homestead. His earpiece crackled. Major Lee! The voice was high and grating. Speak, Corporal. General's back on base. Want you there yesterday, sir. Copy that. Inbound. The brief respite broken by the demands of his benefactor, if you could call him that. Lee angled upward, punching through the atmosphere until another sonic boom marked his passage. As he streaked over a house with its rear entrance gaping open, a single human leg visible in the doorway. Archie had failed to notice it. Thankfully, the singletons remained undetected this time. Not knowing he had missed his prey by a few seconds, a smile tugged at his mouth. Flying beats walking every damn time. It had been almost 4 months since they escaped the base, and he had very little to show for this hunt. The squads had been dispatched all over the surrounding states, searching for the proverbial needle in the haystack. The singletons had systematically taken apart the aura of the hell jumpers. The singletons had systematically taken apart the aura that the hell jumpers had been known for. The chaos their escape had caused still lingered at the base camp, and Amber's injury had begun to weigh heavily on Archie Lee. Frustration had begun to creep in as Archie soared over a patchwork of abandoned towns below. Some reduced to jagged concrete teeth jutting from blackened earth, some cratered like miniature moonscapes with glassy fused edges, others simply left to nature's slow consumption, their structures sagging under the weight of climbing vines. Crossing into the base's invisible boundary, the acrid stench of burning flesh and medical waste assaulted his nostrils, making his eyes water despite months of exposure. He landed with a controlled thud outside the 3-story brick building, its faded Jefferson University sign now defaced with dripping crimson spray paint declaring Ninth Circle of Hell. His team of hellhounds had been back on the base a few days, resupplying for 4 weeks of hunting to come. Archie Lee powers allowed him to fly at supersonic speed, which is great for long-range reconnaissance, but not so great for team-based objectives. Search process should speed up now that the singletons don't have transportation. As he approached the rust-streaked double doors, they swung open with a metallic groan. A tall, skeletal man with sunken cheeks and papery skin emerged, the general's stars untarnished on his collar. General Hawk's decades of military service gave the Helljumpers their veneer of discipline, as if dog tads and ranks weren't masking what they'd become since they took command in those first chaotic days after the collapse. Major, took you long enough, he rasped, voice like gravel in a tin can. And no, I can't do a voice gravel like a tin can. Sorry. Sorry. Major Lee, spine snapped straight, his arm rising in a crisp salute. Sir, at ease. We have the base secured again. The other strike teams have been on containment and recruitment. We're still finding folks in the outlands, mostly troublemakers with genetic anomalies, but they haven't joined civilization as it is now. Not everyone is a candidate, Major Lee replied, while silently cursing the necessity of listening to this desiccated windbag. They weren't real military, just one of many blood-soaked factions vying for power since civilization's collapse. The group called themselves Helljumpers, a perverse nod to old smoke jumper firefighter crews. Now they were known for literal hell they unleashed on survivors. leaving charred corpses, chain gangs of revenants, and traumatized children in their wake. I need you to get back to recruiting, Major. The general hissed, circling Lee like a vulture, his shadow impossibly long in the setting sun. We're losing the eastern, western, and southern fronts to those unwashed hippies of honorable way, the bomb-throwing liberators, and those self-flagellating zealots, the light-bringers. He stopped, his breath hot and fetid against Lee's ear. We can't appear weak or incompetent now. We are still fixing the damage that happened months ago. I'm beginning to wonder if your head is in the right place after what happened. Sita says that man is the key, and he got away on your watch, Major. Hawk's lips curled into a sneer. 4 months, Major. 4 months since they escaped, and we're still cleaning up your mess. He paused, letting the accusation settle between them like a physical weight. Any progress on finding the Singletons, or should I start interviewing your replacement? Lee's jaw tightened. Had a lead earlier, sir. False alarm, just empty farmland. The issue is logistics, sir. We've cleared the cities, but the Singletons have scattered into the wilderness. Last sign was our Humvee ditched down a ravine outside Emporia. They had a 3-week head start after we found their transport. Now, assuming an average of about 4 miles an hour on foot, up to 8 to 12 hours of walking a day, they could be 1,000 miles away. Given what we know of them and their previous travels, I highly doubt it is that much, especially with children. The seers can track where they've been, and we have been following the tracks, but we're still talking hundreds of square miles. Without knowing if they have a vehicle or the direction of travel, he exhaled sharply, request additional trackers and flyers to expand our search grid. General's face darkened. Did I ask for your excuses, Major? I provide your rations, your shelter, your very existence. He stepped closer, nostrils flaring. Perhaps your replacement would yield better results. Failure can be fatal. Lee felt it before he saw it, every hair on his body rising as invisible energy gathered around him. Electricity surged through his nervous system, crackling up his spine and erupting from his eyes, nose, and mouth in blue-white tendrils. His muscles seized. Through the haze of agony, he caught the general's face, illuminated by the very current tearing through him. Lips pulled back in a predatory smile. His knees buckled, and the world tilted sideways. As he tried to catch his breath, the general whispers in his ears, I can feel your incompetence and smell your treasonous thoughts, boy. Do what I ask, and this world will be ours. Fail me again, and you'll beg for death. Major Lee's last thought before he passed out in a pool of his own urine is fuck you. Archie Lee opens his eyes, and it takes his ears and eyes a minute to catch back up. Major Lee, a shrill voice pierced through the haze. Major Archie Lee looked up to see Corporal Clive Kick Me Owens holding out a fresh set of fatigues. Across the pocket, a Velcro name patch read Bailey. Archie's muscles spasm as he forces himself upright, each nerve ending screaming like live wires stripped of insulation. His jaw clenches against the sensation of embers smoldering beneath the skin, sweat beading at his temples despite the infirmary's chill. With a grunt, Lee ripped the burnt green patch from his own uniform, the scorched L in Lee throbbing with each heartbeat. Leave the damn clothes and piss off to your hidey hole, Corporal, he snapped. He looks around the infirmary and takes in the scene. Men missing arms or legs, others entirely swathed in blood-soaked sheets. They weren't soldiers anymore, if they ever were. Some were members of the old military, some National Guard, some weekend volunteers, a few cops or firefighters. These folks understood discipline. However, most of the Helljumpers' forces were forced conscripts recruited over the course of the last several months. What started as a military endeavor had morphed into something Archie was beginning to question. He had heard the rumors of those new conscripts whose minds had been messed with, altered by Dr. Scrape's procedures, which have grown increasingly invasive since he joined about a year ago. Archie felt a twinge of dread. Had it happened to him? He shook it off, sensing that unnatural scrutiny still fixed on him. He stripped away his burned uniform and soiled underclothes and slipped on the fresh fatigues, rolled his neck and shoulders to shake free the stiffness. He tucked in the new shirt, hooked his hand under the edge of the bed to retrieve his name tag. Time to go for Scrape before Scrape shows up, he muttered. As if summoned, a diminutive man with a shiny bald scalp and wide, wire-rimmed glasses approaches. Ah, Major, remarkable, you survived. Shame about your legs. Could have used them myself. But you're fit for discharge. He intoned in a forced British, or was it Australian accent that grated on Archie's nerves. He leaned in a bit too close, a slow, unsettling grin creeping across his face. Tell me, Major, if you die, might I have your liver? Doc, Archie said, voice low and cold, you see that door? Move your ass through it, down the hall, out the double doors, straight to Fuckville, population U. He stepped forward, looming over the smaller man. Your choice. Move or die. Corporal, standing on the far side of the bed watching the confrontation, decided it was time to end this little contest of will, interjecting as he stepped between the two men. By the way, Major, Sita stopped in and asked you to come see her once you were upright. The doctor scurried aside, and Archie strode toward the exit, eyes sweeping over the carnage one last time. Once the door clicked shut behind him, he exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Digging into his pockets, he pulled out a comms unit. Hellhounds. Briefing in 20 at the gym. Be there or you'll wish you were dead. Archie Lee shoved the comm into his pocket, without waiting for confirmation, and stalked down the sterile hallway toward Sita's quarters, each step bringing him closer to the woman whose violet eyes seemed to see through flesh and bone into whatever passed for a soul these days. Every encounter with Sita, the seer, left him feeling violated, transparent, like she'd peeled back his skull and rummaged through his thoughts with dirty fingernails. Yet her uncanny interventions in his affairs had planted seeds of doubt about his autonomy. Thought that his life might be following some predetermined path made his skin crawl. His boots echoed against the concrete as his mind retreated to the hazy days when his choices, however poor, had at least been his to make. His mind drifted back to before all this, when the illusion of choice had at least felt real. There was a time when Archie Lee didn't command a single soldier, wasn't remotely intimidating, and indeed had led a life of little importance. He sat slumped in front of his TV in a cramped apartment, watching a talking head on the news blame unchecked immigration for spreading the virus across this great nation. The guest anchor sneered about scum sneaking in and destroying this once great country. And Archie, mouth half full of reheated pasta, mumbled, Damn right! No sooner had he swallowed that than he felt a familiar tickle at the back of his throat. Bile welled up, saliva pooled in his mouth, and he clamped his hand over his mouth and bolted for the bathroom. By the time he reached the toilet, his gag reflex had already kicked in, and he vomited so hard he collapsed against the bowl, banging his head, spraying the filthy floor and himself in last night's dinner. Nobody checked on Archie Lee in apartment 225. Archie Lee had long ago expelled any hope of love or loyalty from his life. After high school, he tried the army briefly until he set his sights on a general's 16-year-old daughter. Told to leave her alone, he told the general to go fuck himself. Was hauled off to the brig multiple times and eventually was dishonorably discharged. His 20s became a blur of dead-end jobs, jail stints, furious run-ins with the law. Archie thought his arrogance and outbursts made him tough. He refused to let anyone boss him around. He had girlfriends, short-lived relationship, wrecked by his temper or ugly mouth. And swore the real problem was that they didn't deserve him. Zero accountability, zero self-awareness. Now Archie woke alone, bathroom chaos behind him and the TV's fuzzy picture droning on. He blinked as the emergency alert tones pinged through the room, then read the scrolling text. Quarantine zones will be enforced at 0800 martial law was still in effect, and all unauthorized persons are subject to detainment. What the fuck? He muttered, stepping out of the bathroom into a stain-soaked room, spotting his microwave dinner on the tray. He felt another wave of nausea. As he recoiled, His head struck the low ceiling with a crack. What? WTF? He gasped. He had floated off the floor, and for a second he hovered, then crashed down onto the folding table, dinner splattering everywhere, and blacked out again. When he came to the second time, it wasn't in the safety of his apartment. He lay inside a heaving mass of bodies. The stench was gut-wrenching, not invigorating. How long had he been out? Panic surged through him as he clawed his way up through the rot and decay, each handhold slick with gore. His breathing hitched, limbs trembling, but he forced himself toward the faint glow above. In what felt like the longest 10 seconds of his life, he'd hauled himself free, caked in filth, the world spinning. A faint smell of gasoline mixed in rot, a distant scream echoed, followed by a muffled thump as someone collapsed. Their torch tumbled onto the corpse pile. Igniting in a roar of flame, the flames raced up the mound of bodies like a predator closing in for the kill, seeking him out with hungry orange fingers. Archie began to panic, the smell of bile, the stench of burning flesh permeating his position. Archie burst through the top of the pile as if he was riding a rocket. Archie cried out as embers caught on his jacket, small flames licking his back. In a deep, booming voice thundered from behind him. "You're on fire, dumbass. Time to stop, drop, and roll." The gravelly roar cut through the chaos. Archie Lee turned to face an older man in military dress, stars gleaming on his shoulders above a pristine white mustache. His gut twisted with the old familiar rage of being ordered around, but something else stirred beneath it, a desperate need for direction. "Now, maggot!" The man bellowed, Archie's jaw clenched, teeth grinding as his body betrayed him, moving as if on autopilot. He began to float downward, flames licking his back, burning away the filth and tattered clothing. His mind screamed to resist, to tell this bastard to go to hell, but his limbs wouldn't obey. As he landed, someone tackled him, smothering the fire. Archie's fists clenched, then relaxed. "What do we have here?" the mustache man inquired, eyebrow raised. Archie knew he should hurt, yet he felt nothing. He reached behind, fingers finding bare, unburned skin. His breath caught. What was happening to him? "What's your name?" "Private Archie Lee," he replied automatically, then winced at his own words. Private? He'd been kicked out years ago. Archie thought he recognized this man. He seemed so familiar. "Private, huh? We have a lot to talk about. See the staff sergeant in the FOB, half a click west. We'll have use for someone like you." Archie's mouth twitched between a sneer and a smile. Useful? When was the last time anyone wanted him? The thought both sickened and comforted him. "Today, Private." "Sir, yes, sir," crawled from Archie's throat, his rebellion strangled by a sudden shameful relief. He stood and walked away, hating himself for the comfort he found in following orders. "West is that direction, soldier. Tell them General Hawk sent you." The older man pointed the opposite to where Archie was heading. Archie abruptly about-faced, his stride quickened westward as his mind waged war against itself. Archie walked with a purpose in his step, uncertainty in his pocket, and fear in his heart. "What fresh hell am I in now?" he mumbled to himself. He had walked into hell all right that day, but he had also found purpose in pain, joy and sadness, hope and light. He began to wonder if it was real, any of it, as he approached the double doors to the seer's quarters. His mind drifted again to that day. Archie Lee approached the makeshift staging area at the center of town. Where the abandoned mall had been transformed into a military compound, former security towers now bristled with snipers in matte black tactical gear, their night vision scopes glinting occasionally as they swept the scorched Tennessee horizon. The perimeter of the cracked asphalt parking lot was fortified with 10-foot chain link fence, topped with razor wire that had gleamed silver in the harsh setting sun. Quarantine zone banners hung on for dear life, flapping in the wind. Sandbags stained dark with motor oil and dust were stacked to the waist level, creating this khaki-colored wall punctuated by armed sentry posts at each entrance. Two massive desert camouflaged Humvees flanked the single entry point, the rotating 50 caliber gun turrets tracking Archie's approach with mechanical precision. The guards' faces obscured by baklavas with only their eyes visible, swung their M4A1 carbines toward the lone figure trudging up the heat-shimmering road. Halt! Identify yourself! The command exploded through a megaphone, reverberating off the surrounding buildings, as blinding white spotlights stabbed through the dark dusk to illuminate Archie Lee. Shielding his eyes with dirt-crusted forearm, Archie's parched throat struggled to project his response. Private Archie Lee, General Hawk sent me. Piercing beams slid from the sweat-drenched face to resume the restless scanning of the wasteland beyond. Move forward slowly, arms extended away from your body, instructed a voice now modulated to a controlled baritone. Approach the checkpoint officer standing by the gatehouse. Archie Lee approached the gatehouse, arms spread wide in surrender. The guard emerged, scanning him with cold precision. He noted the condition of Archie's clothing, winced at the stench of gore, fuel, and fire. Strip everything off, kick it aside, turn around slowly. After clearance, proceed to decontamination, supplies waiting on the other side, then medical for examination. Archie's eyes darted between the guards' expressionless faces and the ominous tent beyond. Plastic tubing snaking inside, industrial hoses dangling from the ceiling like executioner's rope. His throat constricted. Was this safety? Or a trap? He stared at the spray-painted sign that read Hell Jumpers Intake. His fingers trembled at the shirt buttons. Part of him wanted to run, another part desperate for whatever sanctuary lay beyond. The remains of the shirt fell away, revealing bruised ribs that made him wince with shame. He unbuckled his jeans, hesitating before letting them fall with a wet thud against the concrete. Second guard ran a flashlight over Archie's body, double-checking every inch. Clear. The second guard announced as the 50 caliber guns moved away, their focus on Archie and back to the sentry position that they had been in when he arrived. The area silent now, except for the sound of grinding metal. The first guard then broke the silence. Through that tent to decontamination. Welcome to hell, son. Inside the tent, figures in hazmat suits approached with hoses. Archie's gaze dropped to the drain grate below, suddenly reminiscent of the jail showers he had been in many times. His stomach lurched. Onto the grate, arms up, commanded a female voice. Archie's hands instinctively shielded himself, the shoulder's final dignity. I said arms up. Nobody cares about your package. It's your short story anyway. She chided. Archie raised his arms, shame and rage battling within him. The water struck like bullets, driving him back as he turned slowly in the punishing spray. Something inside him snapped. He found himself rising off the ground, the water arcing away from his body, splashing against the tent walls. Need the cooler in Decon 1, Archie heard the familiar chirp of a radio. A presence entered the room, not seen, but felt. Like a shadow passing over his skin. The temperature plummeted around him. Numbness crept up from his toes, claiming his feet, then his shins, then his thighs in methodical succession. Archie looked down to find himself trapped within a crystalline prison, his body suspended in a translucent wall of ice that had materialized without warning, both containing and immobilizing him in a single frozen moment. The ice shifted, sculpting itself into a woman's face hovering inches from his own. Frost crystallized with each word. Calm. Down. Now. Her voice crackled like breaking ice. Let them finish their job. Land yourself when I let go, or I freeze you solid, every cell, every molecule. The threat hung between them, vapor from her words clouding the air. Archie's lungs burned as he inhaled deeply once, twice, nodding his agreement to the conditions of the steel. The ice receded slowly, and his body descended gradually until the bare feet touched the cold grate again. The ice barrier liquefied, steaming away from him in rivulets across the concrete floor. Clear, the feminine voice echoed through the tent. From beyond the plastic flaps, a different male voice, authoritative, called out. Through the tent exit, supplies waiting, the medical building west for examination. Understood. Yes, sir. Archie managed his voice, barely audible. Archie turned, hands covering his growing, stepped through the tent flap into a warmly lit space. Tables held piles of clothing and travel-sized necessities. Grabbed a tan, grabbed Tan's pants in his size, a white t-shirt, underwear, socks, and a pair of size 10 shoes. No wider widths were available. At the next table, he picked up a deodorant, a toothbrush, and a toothpaste. He dressed as quickly as he could, then he left the tent and headed toward the building, marked with large blue sign reading Progressive Medical Urgent Care for Everyone, complete with the heartbeat line logo. He opened up one of the double doors and walked in toward a young woman with short brown hair sitting behind the counter. Um, they said to come here. She glanced up. Take that clipboard, fill out the form. I'll let the doctor know you're here. She grabbed her walkie talkie from the counter and pressed the call button. Doc, we've got another one. Crackled reply came. Good. Have them finish the form. I'll come collect them when they're done. Archie sat down and stared at the clipboard. The questions were numerous and filled with words he didn't understand. After several minutes of attempting to understand, he gave up. He decided to mark every box yes, then raised his hand. The woman sighed as she watched him struggle to hold it up. "Uh, you don't need to raise your hand. Just bring the clipboard back when you're done." "Oh, okay," he said, stood and walked back to the counter. He handed her the clipboard, then turned to return to his seat. Archie felt a flicker of confusion. What is this? Where am I really? He thought to himself. Archie's gut twisted with suspicion. The clipboard shook in his hands. The place looked like a FEMA camp. But where were the armed guards, the barbed wire, the cattle car processing he'd been raised to fear? His father's warnings echoing. Government help is just control in disguise. But these people had given him clothes, clean water, maybe actually wanted to help. No, impossible. Yet the evidence stood before him. His mind raced between gratitude and terror. Was this kindness real, or was this the most sophisticated trap yet? The walkie-talkie's sudden squawk made him flinch violently, sending his freshly acquired supplies clattering to the floor. "If he's done, send him back to room 4. I'm in the middle of something," cracked the male voice over the speaker. Archie gathered his supplies and shoved them into his pockets, the toothbrush jabbing him in the upper thigh. The young woman behind the counter tapped her pen against the battered clipboard, attempting to gain his attention. "Take this, go through the double doors, to your left, take a right, then it's the 4th door on your right. Now repeat that back so I know you heard me," she insisted, voice cool and precise. Archie swallowed hard. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting sickly yellow pools on the linoleum. "Through those doors, take a right, 4th door on the right." She gave him a curt nod before turning back to the form in her hand, lips curling in disbelief. He heard the soft rustle of paper as she shook her head and held out the paper for him. "Good. Now go." He rose and crossed the narrow reception area, grabbed the paper, then walked to his destination. His palm brushed the metal edge of the door, icy to the touch, and it swung open with a soft click. As he stepped through, the girl's voice drifted after him, low and mocking. "Congratulations." He looked back just in time to see her lean against the counter, shoulders shaking with cruel laughter. Hollow dread seized his gut. The hair on the back of his neck prickled. He found himself floating down the corridor rather than walking. The walls closed in, sterile and blank, each turn bringing him closer to the ominous black numerals stenciled on the door ahead. 4. He pushed it open. Inside, the air was thick with the stench of decay. A single examination chair stood at the center, its leathery stirrups and arm restraints stained and cracked. Tiny dark flecks marred the walls and floor, old blood or worse, and a harsh, swinging surgical lamp hovered above like a halo of menace. A small sink and a rust-speckled cabinet sat beneath a grimy monitor, its screen dark but for 2 bundles of cables snaking up either side like mechanical snakes. Panic flared. He spun to escape, only to discover he was still suspended. With a sudden jolt, his skull collided with the rigid frame of the overhead lamp boom. Stars burst behind his eyes, his paper floating down to the floor as if trying to escape before him. The door on the other side of the room creaked open, and a short, stooped man in a rumpled lab coat shuffled in, tiny spectacles glistening under the harsh light as he flicked on the monitor, sending a line of wires writhing toward Archie. "Well, That saves me some time, the man murmured, voice unnervingly soft and strangely accented. Can you get down on your own, or will we need to assist you? Archie's breath caught as he saw those cables detach from their connections and began to snake their way towards him. Frozen by adrenaline, he could neither speak nor move as the cables began to slide along his pant leg, cold steel sliding up his inner thighs, crossing at his crotch. Racing toward his throat, he thrashed, but the cables formed a set of restraints that snapped shut against his wrists, pinning his arms to his side. Archie began to push himself higher and bumped his head on the ceiling of the room. He struggled left, then right, hovering in the air, unable to get himself down. Ah, I see you will need assistance then. From the corner of the room came a crackling buzz. The walkie. I need the cooler now. Sir, calm down. I'm not trying to hurt you, just making sure you don't hurt me or anyone else. Now calm down, or I will do what I have to. The small man approached the paper on the floor and picked it up. Mr. Archie Lee, since you seem to be unable to talk, are you mute or deaf? The man used the ASL sign for calm down. Archie continued, unable to get his body to do anything, his panic overwhelmed as his head continued to bob up and down, hitting the ceiling at regular intervals. The wires had now snaked up to his neck. They tightened around his throat, yet he felt no pain. They hovered just millimeters from cutting off the air supply. Suddenly, he felt a creeping, biting cold that seeped into his bones, recalling the frost of the decontamination gate. His sight blurred as an icy sheen spread across the floor of the room, and within it a woman's pale visage emerged, lips parted in silent judgment. I thought we'd already covered the importance of remaining calm, and the consequences if you can't, the feminine voice intoned. A freezing gust of air whooshed into Archie's lungs, his vision tunneled, breath rattling in his chest. Then the darkness claimed him, and he slumped to the floor with a heavy thud. Archie woke up screaming, his muscles straining against leather restraints that bit into the raw skin of his wrists, chest, thighs, and ankles. His lungs burned as he began to hyperventilate, each desperate gasp echoing in the sterile room. Then a woman's face swam into focus above him, pale as moonlight, with high cheekbones he recognized, despite having only glimpsed them etched in ice. Her platinum blonde hair fell in a curtain around her face, framing glacial blue eyes that seemed to pierce through the skull and examine the terrified thoughts within. Corners of her full lips turned up slightly as she spoke, her voice flowing like cool water over stones. Ah, good, you're awake. Her breath misted between them like winter fog, each syllable. I cannot talk tonight. Her breath misted between them like winter fog, each syllable crystallizing in the air. I know this is terrifying, she said. Her voice was as smooth and cold as polished marble, but panic will only make it worse. She traced one pale finger along the leather restraint at his wrist, leaving a delicate trail of frost in its wake. I'm Amber. You've already witnessed what I can do, manipulating air currents, transforming my flesh to living ice. Her eyes, the precise blue of a glacier's heart, held his gaze. We are the Hell Jumpers, and this broken world needs our intervention before humanity tears itself apart completely. She leaned in closer, her skin radiating cold like an open freezer. Will you stand with us, Mr. Lee? Archie stared into those blue eyes, terror and fascination boring within him. Something shifted in his chest, a flicker of warmth against the cold dread. Was this the belonging he craved since childhood, or just another trap? His mind screamed to resist, even as his heart whispered that here, finally, he might matter. The thought disgusted him almost as much as it compelled him. Yes, he whispered. Amber circled him like a predator, each footfall releasing a soft crackle of frost against the linoleum. I didn't quite hear that, she said, her breath forming tiny ice crystals that glittered in the harsh overhead light. Could you say it again? Maybe like you have a pair of balls this time. Her fingertips traced the edge of his restraint, leaving a delicate pattern of frozen fractals. Yes, Archie tried to yell, but his voice cracked, the sound withering in his parched throat. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the unnatural chill emanating from his body. Good. Her smile didn't reach her glacial blue eyes. Now, I'm going to leave, and the doctor here is going to finish his exam. And you're going to let him, because if I have to come back a third time, she leaned in close enough that her cold breath stung his ear. It won't be to help you stay calm. The temperature in the room suddenly plummeted as she straightened, the metal instruments on a nearby tray crackling with a thin veneer of ice. She leaned in until her face hovered inches from his, her breath crystallizing between them. Tell me those restraints won't be necessary. They won't, he whispered, muscles going slack against the letter. Amber straightened, nodded to the doctor whose glasses caught the harsh light. He's cooperative now. Her gaze flicked back to Archie, voice dropping to a silken threat. Aren't you? Archie's neck strained as he tracked her exit, the door closing with a soft click that echoed like a gunshot in the silent room. The doctor adjusted his spectacles, the lenses catching harsh light. Mr. Lee, I am Dr. Hugo Scrape. I need to conduct a comprehensive examination. But your unstable abilities present a significant risk. He reached for a syringe filled with clear liquid. For both our safety, I'll need to proceed while you are sedated. Dr. Scrape lowered a translucent mask over Archie's face, the rubber edges forming a seal against his skin. Deep breaths now, he instructed, his voice muffled through the plastic. Count backward from 10 for me, if you would be so kind. 10, 9, 8, 7. And just like that, Archie Lee's world went black again. Archie's eyelids fluttered open to find two figures silhouetted against a harsh overhead lights. As his vision cleared, he recognized Dr. Scrape's stooped form standing beside a tall, broad-shouldered man in military fatigues, the man who had sent him here. Stranger's face triggered a jolt of recognition from the same square jaw, steel gray crew cut that had appeared on countless emergency broadcasts. This was the Pentagon spokesman who had assured a terrified nation that the situation was contained and no cause for alarm. Only now he wore colonel's eagles on his collar, not the civilian suit from the press conferences. He'd introduced himself as General Hawk at the pyre. General Hawk's withered fingers drummed against the metal clipboard, his voice graveled rasp that filled the sterile room. Dr. Scrape, what do we have in this batch? Dr. Scrape's thin lips curled into something between a grimace and a smile as he adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses. Mostly fodder for the front lines, I'm afraid. Standard mutations, nothing exceptional. He tapped a yellowed fingernail against Archie's chart. But Mr. Lee shows genuine promise. He's a telekinetic with remarkable potential. During the sedation, him and objects around him began to levitate. Most interesting, though. When we monitored his brain activity, the flight centers lit up like a Christmas tree. This man has Superman fantasies. He doesn't just want to move objects, he yearns to soar. A slow, predatory smile spread across General Hawk's face, revealing teeth worn from years of grinding. Well, now that may be useful, he said. His voice like gravel churning in a cement mixer. He pivoted on his polished boot heel toward the medical cot where Archie lay. The man who had somehow managed to telekinetically extract himself from the heap of bodies twisted, broken, and malformed by the virus that had been unceremoniously piled on the streets for disposal. General Hawk's eyes narrowed as he studied Archie's face, searching for the weakness. Privately, as I recall, correct, soldier? Question hung between them like a loaded weapon. Yes, sir, Archie replied, his mouth dry as sand. Something twisted in his gut. Pride that the general remembered him, disgust at his own desperate need for recognition. The general's lips curled into what might have been a smile on any other man. How'd you like to make major? He asked. Each word a carefully baited hook that Archie could feel sinking into his flesh, even as his mind screamed to resist. It has been several months since that day. Many battles fought and soldiers lost. Despite his growing reputation as a skilled leader, he still gets freaked out by Sita and her prophetic vision and strange powers. He paused as his hands touched push bar, mentally preparing his thoughts for the weirdness that was a conversation with Cedia. Archie Lee silently hoped this was the beginning of the end of his hunt, but deep down, he wasn't sure if he was the hunter or the hunted. That is chapter 2. Tomorrow night, I will read chapter 3 and maybe 4, depending on the length. I hope you guys enjoyed it, but this is my book. You can get the digital version at Barnes & Noble or Amazon. The paperback is available only on Amazon. Hope you all have a good evening. Thanks for joining.